Hello, and welcome to Harvest of Science, a research creation project by Ceyda Yolgormez, Evan Hile, and David Johnston. In this video, we will share with you the process of our project. We will share with you the intentions, the design decisions that led to us including a language model into our quest for collecting a glossary of intelligences. So first we will introduce you the project, and then we will move on to interpretations of what it means to have machinic forms of writing in our current cultural moment. We will be interviewing Professor Bart Simon. So we have been working with a language model that uses machine learning techniques to produce human-like text. This is GPT-3 or generative pre-trained transformer, which rests on a probabilistic distribution over sequences of words that are derived from a large corpus developed by the same company, OpenAI. It is the third in a series of models that focus on language understanding in the area of natural language processing. So the process is described as a generative pre-training of a language model on a diverse corpus of unlabeled text. This would be the first phase. And then this is followed by a discriminative fine-tuning on each specific language task. So the decision to use unlabeled text in the formation of the language model actually eliminates the need for human labor and allows incorporation of even larger bodies of text, which is what enables GPT-3 to be the state-of-the-art language model because of its increased capacity and because of its higher number of parameters, which is around 17 billion at the time. So we started this project with the intention of composing an eclectic glossary of intelligences that would work to destabilize the hegemonic and normative hold on the conception of intelligence that is at work in the Western culture, for lack of a better term. What we see across domains of technical knowledge production and institutions is a rather singular conception of intelligence, emerging mainly from the rational theories of mind and aiming to quantify this supposedly sui generis entity that is called intelligence. So our aim was to multiply the definitions of intelligence, or rather highlight the coexistence of competing visions for what intelligence means and what these visions actually presuppose in terms of the relationalities. So the contesting the normative assumptions of intelligence also stemmed from a curiosity about what machine intelligence might mean in the context of non-human agency. And this led to the decision to include a machinic agent into our research creation project. So in its final form, our project became an experimental writing process between three humans and the natural language processing model, collaboratively and iteratively weaving a glossary of intelligences. And how did we start talking with this language model? We will give you more detailed examples following, but just to tell you about our design decisions. So our prompts actually consisted of a vocabulary gleaned from major textbooks, handbooks, glossaries, and recent papers published in cognitive science, human psychology, animal psychology, ecology, cybernetics, and artificial intelligence. So we would prompt the GPT-3 with definitions of intelligence coming from such disciplines. However, this task ended up being a poor usage for the functionality of GPT-3. The most promising angle we found was feeding the model modified terms from across the disciplines, several at a time. So the model went from referencing connected knowledge or continuing the syntactic pattern to a slew of increasing the convoluted consonantated syllables that read like actually, as one researcher noted, Foucault on LSD. So then we chose another modifying pattern. So we were taking terms either invented by GPT-3 or referenced by it in its outputs. And then we would add contradictory modifiers, such as transforming some kind of concept that it gave into another, and then waiting for it to riff together on the meaning of the new term developed and devoid of a phenomenological grounding, actually. As we fed the model these terms along with other prose materials outputted by the GPT-3 in our previous experimental sessions, we found that GPT-3 was capable of some convincing cultural theoretical development. Our first main output from these sessions is a curated collection of its most true-to-life outputs. Topics range from conversion of humans to deified entities in a simulated society to a manifesto calling for a re-evaluation of Berardi's semiocapitalism paradigm in an era of talking non-human agents. So you see, what you see here is 5 themes that have emerged out of our experimentations with GPT-3. And these themes right now mark the main themes of our glossary of intelligences, which will be expanded over time. And what you see below each category is also some interesting text that the GPT-3 gave in response to such themes and prompts. And what was particular to our positioning relative as humans positioning relative to our non-human interlocutor was trying to play a role that was both inviting the machinic sense-making to take over the general direction of our texts, all the while editing it, either real-time or post-trial, and we would edit it for the output to remain within the realm of human comprehension. So while the general direction of the text would be taken by the GPT-3's direction, we would then keep on editing it to keep it kind of close to human intelligibility. This led to kind of a dance of agency within a zone of mutual intelligibility between the human and the machine, following and listening to the gaps in the health meanings that the model generates at times, or gets stuck somewhere in the feature space where no sense could be found at others. So here we would like to show you some examples of that we have pulled from our experiments. This one is one of the experimentations we did with the GPT-3 on July 19th. We are using the real-time output from GPT-3 and we are going to be using a prompt by GPT-3 that we had come up with our previous experimentations. So what you're seeing on the screen right now is on the left is the OpenAI user interface for its playground. Playground is where we are able to work with the engine and come up with texts basically. And what you're seeing on the right is the parameters that we play with, such as the frequency penalty and presence penalty, which are parameters that work to either if the sentence, if we want certain words to be appearing more frequently, or if we want the generator, the language model, to produce new subjects, to talk about new subjects. And next, we would like to show you an example where we did not mask our reactions to GPT-3's generated text. So you could see how on topic and off topic the model could go.
Like, we don't write in big blocks of text. We write in small, like you'll be writing your dissertation, you'll write over months, you'll have ideas that'll occur to you. So it's just, oh my God, that's terrible.
That's a waste of a token for sure.
Well, it's exactly like our minds in a way. Like we wake up one morning, we're bright and brilliant. The next week, well, we're like slugs. Nothing happened.
What happened?
It's the same with this. I like it.
Okay, finally. 50 minutes singularity. I don't want this painting.
Yes, thank you. Wow. Wow. A recipe for consciousness requires the collision of two. I almost have to read it slowly as if it's esoteric literature.
And now we are moving on to our interview with Professor Bart Simon from Concordia University. We will be talking about the cultural implications of the kind of work that GPT-3 does in terms of, especially in terms of its potential for unsettling normative understandings, the possibility for revealing the common sense, and also a discussion about how actually it is the context that gives meaning rather than the individual agents and their interactions. And moving on to larger questions about what would it mean to raise a community of multiples, humans and non-humans.
But if you're trying to trouble common sense understandings of particular words or meanings, then yes, new words can do that, can get people to think differently about how they understand, their normal understandings of words.
Yeah.
So if GPT-3 could say that, right, that would be fantastic, but it can't itself say that. However, by exposing the inner workings of the black box of the algorithm, somehow at the same time as producing the writing, one gets, if you like, a sort of deconstruction of the black box and the black box at the same time, which I think would be a sort of fascinating contribution for this kind of writing, and again allows people to engage with the non-human in its own terms rather than trying to pretend that it's trying to be like a human writing, which is the wrong way to understand what's going on here. These quite readily, I think. Anyway.
Yeah, I'd like to go back to what you said about like unsettling the norm, kind of like these pieces of health meanings coming together and unsettling the normative way in which we engage in discursive activity. So yeah, I was of course thinking Garfinkel and like how he destabilizes the context by introduction of either attitudes or different words, just playing with that context difference, right? And that to me is kind of interesting, especially when you linked it to like GPT-3's emergence as an agent in the cultural production scene, because that's kind of what I'm thinking too, even though it comes up as this heralding like status quo, like very corporate clean writing type of model, it is also very much wreathed with potential, because it is not easy to first of all control the algorithm even if we have the parameters. But yeah, what I'm thinking is like, could there be this kind of an unveiling of the social that the GPT-3 in its subversive mode of writing could instigate in a meaningful manner?
Yeah, I mean, I think if it is understood in terms of the mode of its operation, not in terms of people need to understand how it's programmed and that level, but that it is not pretending to do what humans do. It has its own operational logic. And so we just need to find a language for conveying its operational logic. It means that as an agent capable of producing writing, like its writing isn't tied to its corporate agenda necessarily, any more than any human individual agent is tied to a particular corporate agenda. It depends, like it just totally depends. And then all of the weight and all of the pressure falls on the community that that GPT-3 is talking to.
Yeah.
And that can be a total resistance and sort of like, this is bullshit kind of community, or it can be one for whom the mode of discourse, the dialogue opens up kind of exchange rather than closes it down. And that's the measure of its contribution.
How is it possible in the contemporary cultural conditions that we are able to perceive these agency potentialities undergirding the technology itself, but not the tree and not the table and the static kind of non-humans?
So the big difference, and this is why it gets all the press is because the machines or whoever's trying to show off the machines are trying to pretend that they're humans. So either the machine is pretending to be human, not by its own design. It's not its fault. It's not trying to pretend to be human, but whoever made it is trying to have it pretend to be human, or it's being sold or marketed or presented as that which can pretend to be human or be like a human. Trees don't pretend to be humans, and nor do we claim that they do, or rocks or a whole host of other non-humans. But for some reason, we're obsessed with the sort of machinic simulacrum.
My question is, how does the machine ask this? This is not a question of invitation from the non-human either. The non-humans are already calling for us, right?
One of the things I think is interesting about GPT-3's pretense at being a human cultural producer, a human writer or songwriter or any of those kinds of things, is that unlike other kinds of non-humans like trees and animals and so on and so forth, humans, at least in our Western cultural context, have a hard time engaging with those things as genuine interlocutors. We have to struggle to work hard. So there's something about our residual humanism that makes it really hard to engage with non-humans as interlocutors without a whole lot of extra work and sort of conceptual weight and baggage and training and so on and so forth. Whereas we can come part way, if you like. It's almost like we can go a little bit of the way if the non-human pretends to be a little bit human, so we can start a conversation.
Yeah.
And then reveals that it's actually not human at all. One would hope that the machine agencies would become kind of emissaries of non-human agencies in general, and sort of open up the field of interlocution beyond sort of machine agencies themselves. And I could see designing machine agencies specifically for that task, right?
Yeah,
machine agencies which would introduce humans to ocean agencies and river agencies and so on and so forth. That would be very cool. I mean, the thing about machine agencies as being different from other kinds of agencies is that old chicken and egg thing that you were starting about in terms of the beginning and the end of the sort of Luturian chain. Machine agencies always get to, because of residual humanism, be human made in the last instance.
Yeah.
So on both left and right critiques of technology, it always comes down to the human who made it. And that's consistent with humanistic kind of approaches to thinking about technology. But if we're looking instead at what's downstream rather than what's upstream, right, then we don't worry about the human that made it, because the machine is now acting with a degree of independence relative to the human that made it, and it can be taken into a certain extent in its own terms, and its agency stands apart from and possibly critical of the human that made it, which is when it becomes kind of interesting from a post-humanistic perspective.
Thank you for tuning in. We hope these discussions, or the snippets of discussions, create some spark for thought for you. Please make sure to check our website to see the complete harvest of science, and also to be notified about our future exhibitions and published work.